As we've discussed in multiple videos, Donald Trump's authoritarian lawlessness has finally scared the hell out of even conservative attorneys and conservative journalists. For example, the editors of the Free Press, which is a MAGA-friendly independent media agency, just dropped a bombshell op-ed in which they interview 7 legal experts, including major conservative experts, and the consensus from all of them is that they are deeply concerned about the Trump administration. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as I've mentioned in previous videos, one of the reasons that I refer so much to the Wall Street Journal and the National Review and even occasionally the Free Press is because as a liberal, as a progressive, as somebody who does not like Donald Trump, I think the only way to potentially break through with right-leaning independents who are not fully in the MAGA cult is to appeal to people who are nominally on their side, but who are also sounding the alarm about Trump's lawlessness, like the Wall Street Journal, like the National Review, and like the Free Press, which was founded by Barry Weiss. It's MAGA-friendly, it is right-leaning, it grades Trump on a curve, and they're freaked out. Okay, so we're going to look into this. Is Donald Trump breaking the law? 7 experts weigh in. Trump's critics say we're in a constitutional crisis. The White House says that's hysterical. What do our top legal minds say? And Mediaite is the one I actually saw about this, and then I dove into the article itself. Startling, lawless, disturbing. Legal experts unanimously sound the alarm over Trump in the Free Press. The Free Press asked 7 of the sharpest legal minds in our country from across the political spectrum to weigh in on the start of the second Trump administration and whether it's acting lawlessly. And all 7, several of whom come from conservative backgrounds, expressed serious concern. So keep that in mind as we explore this. And again, this is by the editors, the editorial board of the Free Press. The first 90 days of Donald Trump's second term have been marked by a series of aggressive legal maneuvers, among them shaking down law firms that Trump regards as anti-Trump, threatening to revoke tax-exempt status from Harvard, the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, and green card holders on campus, and more. Regarding the deportation of an alleged Venezuelan gang member, the Supreme Court on Saturday ordered a hold on the administration's plans, writing, quote, "The government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court." Many critics argue that the administration's actions stretch the limits of executive power. Others argue that they are outright unconstitutional. The Trump White House and its defenders state this is hysterical, and that Trump is only using the powers of the presidency arrogated since the Obama administration. In the case of deporting illegal immigrants, to choose one example, they say he's doing nothing less than restoring the rule of law that the Biden administration flouted. So we asked the 7 of the sharpest legal minds in the country from across the political spectrum, including a Bush White House lawyer, a progressive constitutional scholar, and a former federal judge, one simple question. Is the Trump administration acting lawlessly? What should we make of Trump's legal strategy, if there is indeed a clear strategy? What stands out about this moment? Is this a usual clash between courts and the executive branch, or are we heading into uncharted waters? The consensus is striking and perhaps surprising given the ideological diversity of the contributors. All agreed that Trump's legal tactics reflect a dangerous willingness to ignore statutory and constitutional constraints, and that he must be reined in quickly. This is what they said. Michael McConnell, he's a singer. Michael McConnell, a former Bush lawyer, I believe McConnell is he's a federal judge appointed by President Bush. The Trump White House is sabotaging itself with its unbridled hostility towards the courts. The Supreme Court has been doing its best to diffuse the looming clash with the administration, a confrontation that would wreak certain damage on both to the presidency and to the courts, and thus our constitutional republic. The court has reined in some of the more questionable district court interventions against the administration, insisting, as it should, on compliance with the rules of jurisdiction, standing, and remedial authority, while upholding basic principles of due process. The best examples are the deportation cases, where the court reversed one lower court that halted mass deportations for acting without jurisdiction, but in the same order forbade the executive from whisking potential deportees off to foreign lands before they have time to file suit in the proper court and obtain due process. In another, it moderated a district court order to effectuate the return of an erroneously deported alien, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, while upholding the order to facilitate his return and to share what it can with the court about the steps it's taking to bring him back. Rather than welcoming these partial victories, the Trump administration responded by refusing to do anything to bring back Garcia, insulting individual judges and threatening impeachment, and even floating the bizarre notion of imprisoning American citizens, along with aliens, in foreign jails. These reactions will almost certainly produce the opposite result from what the administration hopes for. Life-tenured judges are not easy to bully. As a parallel branch, the government has advantages in court that no other party receives. Courts tend to defer to the government's judgment in close cases and accept the government's version of the facts when events are murky. The Trump administration could forfeit these advantages if its statements in court are seen to be as evasive or misleading. If it acts carelessly without a sound factual basis and it fails to treat the courts with due respect, this kind of behavior is unprofessional and self-defeating. It's not too late for the administration to get a grip. Already, Trump has backed down on some of his tariffs. Surely his lawyers are advising a less belligerent strategy for working with the courts. As the ancient Greeks knew well, hubris leads to nemesis, and nothing is so likely to cause a reversal of political fortune as overreach. And from 2002 to 2009, he served as a circuit judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, appointed by President Bush. Donald Trump, Mafia Boss. This is by Lawrence Lesig. We need to recognize and name the form of government we're living in right now. Its closest analog is the mafia. Trump is using extortion to achieve his objectives. Too many are yielding to his extortion because they believe that to be the less costly alternative. For some it is, for the world it is not. The only way to respond to a capo-in-chief is through a full-on resistance, regardless of the cost, for however long it takes. I mean the word extortion precisely. In context after context, Trump is threatening illegal action as a way to induce a deal. He's threatened to impose huge penalties on universities without due process of law as a way to induce them to accept his demands. He's threatened to destroy law firms whose lawyers have opposed him in the past without due process of law as a way to build free legal resources to advance his ends. And though some believe the law technically gives the president to declare an emergency when there clearly is none, so as to trigger the power to impose crippling tariffs on friends and opponents alike, I do not believe the law, properly interpreted, gives him that power. So here too he deploys illegal action to bully nations and corporations to do what he wants. Never has a president behaved like this. It's not even close. Sure, during actual wars, presidents have walked up to the line of executive authority. Maybe FDR and Lincoln crossed those lines. Legal historians are on both sides of the debate. But this president threatens with the power he knows he does not have, even if he believes he will get away with threatening it. And in the face of this threat, the truly tragic reality is that the key institution designed to resist this threat, Congress, is incapable of mustering any resistance. The courts will do what they can, but courts were never built to address this kind of threat. Trump knows that, or the architects of Trump's chaos know that, which is why, on so many fronts, the extortion is working. And that Lawrence Lesig is a professor of law at Harvard Law School. Ed Wheelen, I support Trump's policy goals, but oppose turning law into politics. Evidently for Donald Trump, the law is nothing but politics, so it's not surprising that he would apply his tactics for political battles in the legal realm. Always be on the attack, never admit error, stoke grievances, proclaim false victories, posit conspiracies, condemn betrayal, decry tyranny, own the libs, redefine reality, sow chaos, improvise on the run, and so on. A primary means by which Trump has implemented this political vision is to make the Department of Justice an extended arm of the White House. The Attorney General has always been accountable to the president, but the DOJ has long enjoyed considerable day-to-day operational autonomy. That separation has been driven by the concern to avoid both the appearance and reality that the White House's political interests are distorting the administration of justice. The Trump White House has no such concern. On the contrary, it wants it known that the DOJ is pursuing the White House's policy interests. So the de facto Attorney General, to whom nominal Attorney General Pam Bondi and other top DOJ officials answer, appears to be White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, a non-lawyer whose sharp political skills include an inclination to utter brazen falsehoods, and that's being very charitable. The White House has also marginalized the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel. That office has long held the responsibility to review a president's imposed executive orders and proclamations to ensure that they are lawful. The Office of Legal Counsel has a strong institutional bias in favor of executive power, but its unwillingness to rubber stamp Trump's decrees has rendered it unwelcome. The unsurprising result is that many of Trump's executive orders and proclamations have serious legal vulnerabilities. And I'll point out as a sidebar, consider this. The Office of Legal Counsel was the one that in 1973 proclaimed that a sitting United States president could not and would not be prosecuted by the DOJ. That's how in favor they are of executive power. They're like, yeah, the president can literally get away with murder as long as he's in office, and the only way you could go after him is when he's out of office. That was, 50 years ago by the Office of Legal Counsel. So when Wheelen says this, he is 100% correct. They're not timid. They want robust executive power, but they don't want full-on tyranny. That's the distinction. As someone who supports many of Trump's policy goals, I fear that the administration has no coherent legal strategy. Its temperamental disposition to see law as politics will not help it win legal battles, and its growing but wildly overblown perception of the judiciary as its enemy portends a stark conflict that will leave us all worse off. Ed Wheelen is a distinguished senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, a former law clerk to Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. He served as a principal deputy assistant attorney general in the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel from 2001 to 2004. So we have others as well, but I think I saw Andy McCarthy in here as well. Let me scroll down. There we go. Andy McCarthy. Now, this guy is a conservative writer for the National Review. He's a major Fox News legal analyst. He actually featured in our recent video. This is what he has to say. Trump's Solicitor General has conceded to the Supreme Court that the administration lawlessly deported Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, the one country to whom his removal was prohibited by law. Having blithely admitted illegal conduct, the administration of a president who vows to bring the Beijing behemoth to heel with tariffs, unilaterally imposed based on a fictitious national emergency, risibly says it is powerless to act because the mighty San Salvador, a supplicant to the administration paid all of $6 million to detain 300 deportees, now has custody. To describe what Donald Trump has done in this one case, one can't do better than cite Judge Harvey Wilkinson, a Reagan appointee deservedly renowned, especially among originalists, writing for the Fourth Circuit Thursday. And he gives an excerpt of this opinion that we've read before, which is, the government is asserting the right to sash away residents of this country, in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims in essence that because it's rid itself of custody, there's nothing that can be done. This should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear. The real question is why the administration is acting lawlessly, and not just in the matter of hundreds of deportations without due process. Trump began his term by flouting Congress's TikTok divestment law. His executive orders against law firms and other political foes are unconstitutional bills of attainder, stunning in their audacity. Executive power has been turned on universities, and however in need of reform they are, profoundly in need, to my mind, extortion is not the American way. Is there a strategy? The somehow less disturbing possibility is that, having been the victim of ruinous lawfare, the leveraging of the government's law enforcement and intelligence apparatus against a political enemy, Trump is merely exacting retribution as promised during the campaign. More perilous, having cowed the conservative constitutionalist elements of the Republican Party and thus nullified Congress's formidable arsenal to check executive misconduct, Trump seeks to eviscerate any remaining constraints on his own power by illustrating that the courts and American institutions are impotent too. So, folks, this is stunning. Again, there are others as well, but they are more centrist and progressive. And again, I love that, particularly the more liberal and progressive attorneys. But I really wanted to emphasize the conservative, Trump-aligned attorneys, judges, and legal scholars. The consensus here, as described by the conservative editors of the conservative Free Press, is that there is cause for serious concern. And there is. What Donald Trump is doing is unprecedented, and we're only 3 months into his administration, and we have about 4 years to go, potentially longer if he tries to violate the 22nd Amendment. This should scare the hell out of everybody, and anyone who pretends that this is business as usual and Trump is acting within the confines of the law, they are full of shit. They are either stupid, lying, or ignorant, because the people who are nominally aligned with Trump, who also have legal expertise and experience, are sounding the alarm, saying this is wrong. But there we go. What's going to be done about it? Who knows? In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.